as far as I'm going to go down, I guess, to the guy who is next on my least impressed me list here, but Trevor Lawrence. Um, he was 6 of 9, 71 yards. He had one really nice throw. Overall, I didn't see anything that jumped out to me. Like, if I hadn't known Trevor Lawrence was who he is, there's no way I would have watched that game and thought this guy is a generational.
This is Gardner Minshew, right?
Yeah.
Like, you would have thought that. And I think part of that was play design, though. They did not utilize his skills, at least from a running ability, in any way whatsoever. They kept him in the pocket. And we can get into it later, but a lot of these long touchdowns taken 4 or 5 seconds to develop these plays, and they didn't let Trevor Lawrence develop that amount of time. And maybe it's because they don't trust the line. Maybe it's because they know that he can do that and they don't want to force that yet. But that's what I think the difference was between being spectacular and being unspectacular for these rookie quarterbacks, was being able to generate that extra time in the pocket and make those not broken plays, but extend the plays to get extra open receivers.
Yeah. And Trevor, like Mac, and to some degree, all of these guys, it's a situation where he threw the ball 9 times. Okay. He completed six passes. A lot of them were short. I don't think we're not making any sweeping judgments about who he is off of this one appearance. But as far as first impressions here went, I expected, I think, to see a little bit more from him. I thought maybe they would challenge him a little bit more with more throws down the field. Like you said, get him out on the run, show off his athleticism. And they didn't really do that. And I'm not exactly sure why. I think we all know Trevor Lawrence is going to be probably just fine. This game is just whatever. But if he is your presumed starter, even though Urban won't admit that, I would have liked to have seen him do a little bit more within the offense, even if it is just one preseason game, because you only get 3 of them.
Right.
So
what I did see out of him that I didn't see out of who I'd put next on my list of least impressive is he actually got to go through his reads and progressions. So he was 6 of 9, but that wasn't his first look on all 6 of his pass completions. Whereas Zach Wilson, all of his passes were to his first read or on design runouts that gave him the opportunity to find an open receiver that he was staring at the entire time. He stared down Corey Davis on all 4 of his first series throws. That was the only place he was looking. And yes, Corey Davis was able to get open on 2 of them, but there was no, it's kind of like designing your first 15 plays, right? But he designed the first 15 plays and he didn't have to take a second read on his first 15 plays. He knew where he was going and he was going to go there regardless. The one time that he did have to go to his second and third progression, he threw into the middle of the field on a slant that was double covered. And those are the dangerous throws that he needs to avoid.
Yeah, I think it's hard for me to pass too much judgment there, just because you don't really know what these guys are being asked to do in these scenarios. And I think you've made a good point in saying that these coaching staffs as a whole, I think, protected them very well and put them all in positions to succeed to some degree. And it might be a situation where they were like, Zach, we want to see you get the ball out quick and get, not necessarily telegraph your throw, right? But this is where you're going with the ball, and just getting the play call in, communicating it in the huddle, things that he didn't do at BYU. He obviously missed a couple of days of camp as well, as we talked about before. So maybe that's still something that they're working on with him. And I agree with you. I would slot him in this spot on those 5 as well. Like Trevor Lawrence, 6 of 9, only 63 yards, didn't really push the ball down the field all that much at all. I don't recall a single throw that went over like 15 yards necessarily.
Yeah. What I'm going to be concerned about with him is when he does get that Elijah Moore back and he's waiting 4 seconds for him to create that separation on those deep routes, that he's just sitting there staring down Elijah Moore. And then if he doesn't find a way to get open, he's got no secondary fallback plan. So I
Yeah.
appreciate what you're saying, though, that there's so many more aspects to this job, like anybody's job, right? Everybody's like, oh, you do this. And it's like, well, I do that, but I also do these 15 other things on a daily basis that are so mundane at this point that we don't recognize, right?
Yeah.
Commanding the huddle, getting everybody lined up correctly, making sure that you're set for 1 second before you hike the ball. Like there's all these little checklist things that they could be knocking out with Zach Wilson right now that they weren't even focused on. We know you can throw the ball.
Yeah. And I think with him, as far as these guys all meeting my expectations of them, with him, I expected a little bit more down the field. Maybe expected him to roll out and let a play develop and see if something would open up, because that's kind of like what he was at BYU to some degree when he wasn't, camping out back there in the pocket with all day to throw behind their O-line. But, he was a guy that took his shots and showed off that arm talent. That's what makes him special. That's why they took him number 2 overall. I didn't really see a ton of that.
Well,
And
I think a lot of this was prescribed, and I don't want to call myself correct on this, even though I was. But I mean, on the first drive, it was 7 run, 4 pass, right? And what we said was we can't break Zach Wilson right now, and that we identified him as the biggest risk for that. So 7 runs,
they ran the ball effectively.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
Be fair.
7 runs, 4 passes on the first drive, 5 runs, 5 passes on the second drive. He had a 12-play drive and he had a 10-play drive. Like they moved the ball effectively. And when they got pinned at I believe it was their 2-yard line off of a terrible punt return decision, they made the right call and didn't let him go out there and have to take that, risk of potentially breaking him.
Yeah. Getting hit in the end zone, safety, making a bad decision. They did the right thing with him. And he, like you mentioned off the top, is like Trevor Lawrence, really the only one of these guys that is a for sure week 1 starter. So I don't think they're necessarily looking for him to show them something right now. I think that it's all a process for Zach. He's probably going to get a little more run in the second preseason game. Doubt he plays in the third. I'm not really sure what.
So you're ruling out Mike White and James Morgan in the quarterback competition for him? Officially?
I'm gonna have to, yeah. And not that Zach was all that impressive, but Mike White and James Morgan aren't necessarily pushing him. I don't believe. I could be wrong.
Still shocking to me that they haven't added a veteran quarterback just for the knowledge transfer, right? Like you are here. Yeah. I mean, I can't even remember his name. Who was the quarterback for the Texans last year that was their 4th QB that wasn't even at practice? He was just there virtually.
Oh, God, I don't know.
Josh McCown. Josh McCown.
That's Josh McCown.
Like, why don't you just fucking give Josh McCown $750,000 to just say, hey, this is what the quarterback position entails, because Mike White and James Morgan are not going to be able to do that.
No, even just to hop on a Zoom call during like film meetings and just say like, hey, what did you see here? This is what you should be doing. Yeah, 100%. I'm still holding out hope that the Bears are dangling Nick Foles out there and something will happen. But I think the biggest piece there anyway is Nick Foles doesn't want to go to New York to back up Zach Wilson. And he's pretty firm in that. Not that he has a no trade clause, but he's just, a team's not going to trade for a guy that doesn't want to be there necessarily.
Yeah, so we'll probably talk about Texans later, but man, to go from Josh McCown as your QB4 to Deshaun Watson as your QB4, I mean, I don't know who their QB 1, 2, and 3 are, but shit, they must have had a hell of a season.
Yeah, they really beefed up their quarterback room in the offseason for sure.